Welcome to Publishing Options and Pointers, Unit 5. This is Dawn Brotherton with Blue Dragon Publishing. Today we're going to talk about book covers. I know people say you shouldn't judge a book by the cover, but you do, so let's talk about how you should put your best foot forward. You always want to start with knowing your audience. That sounds pretty obvious, but it also applies to your book cover as well as marketing and many other things that you're going to touch on when you're writing. First of all, who are you writing to attract? Even if you're writing to, say, a middle grade audience, you want to attract the child's attention, but you need to satisfy the parent or the person that's going to put out the money for the book. So the pictures, for example, on this cover, that's really eye-catching for the kids, but when you read the blurb on the back, that's really what's going to hook the parents. Believe it or not, the generation that you're writing for can actually make a difference on what you put on the back cover. For example, Gen Y millennials like things that are punchy and short. They don't want a lot of copy on the back, and they don't really care as much about the author as much as they do the content. The Generation X, or latchkey, which is like 1965 to 1979, they don't like that hard sell. You must buy this book now. When you're trying to capture their attention, you want to use the we word more often. They like the group, we're all in this together kind of feel. And they want to know, most important, what problem does it solve? Why should they buy your book? Not that they must buy it, but what are they going to get out of this? The baby boomers, that's like 1949 to 1964. Believe it or not, they say in this case, they're the me generation where the world revolves around them. They judge success based on status, so the author's credentials make a huge difference, and they really respect reviews from mainstream media. The greatest generation, which are the folks that were born before 1946, they look for the comfort in tradition, and they like to stick with what works. Writing with less copy, larger type will really help with the Generation X and catching their attention. Anytime you write for any generation, you should use active tense. So get them involved in the story right from the beginning. Colors and fonts really come into play on your cover. We talked about in the interior how you want to stick with some really basic fonts because they're easier to read. On the outside is when you get to play a little bit more, and we're going to look at a few different fonts. For example, you're not going to want to use a red, bloody, drippy font for your title if you're writing a romance book. The genre has to be obvious right from the beginning when they take a look at the book. Is this a fantasy book? Does it have dragons on the front and castles? Is it a historical book? Is it a military book with soldiers? The picture on the front and the font have to make it obvious for the reader to figure out what kind of book this is. A great recommendation is to go to the bookstore and look in the area that you're writing and go through some of those books, take pictures of the ones you like the best, and that'll give you some ideas of how you want to design your cover. So here are some examples of fonts. I'll let you look them over first before I tell you what they match, and we'll see if you can figure out the genre before I tell you. All right, some of them are pretty easy. I think that the sci-fi one was a dead giveaway when it has the word space in it. And Western. People picture those old signs in the Western saloons, so that was kind of a giveaway. But even the fantasy and the horror were fairly obvious. So if you see these fonts on a book cover, it'll kind of jump out at you. Now let's talk about color. There is a psychology behind the colors that you use. I'm a psych major, so I really like this part. Certain colors spark interest, and they bring about certain emotions. Bright colors are really happy and positive, where dark colors are kind of depressing and gloomy. Warm colors are more creativity and comfort. Cool colors are calm and peaceful. When you're writing your book, thinking back to who your audience is, remember there are cultural differences as well. So the color red in China means good luck, but in South Africa, it's a color of mourning. So where your book is set would make a difference on the cover that you use, but also maybe even internally. Make sure you know these little nuances before you go writing about other countries or cultures. Mourning in the US is black, in East Asia, white is the color of mourning. Some colors are deeply rooted in our brains because they're visible all around us. Like red is the color of fire, and it's associated with warmth, and green with nature. We're biologically wired to pay attention to bright colors because brightly colored animals or plants are often poisonous. We're drawn to a red fruit over a green fruit because the color red indicates ripeness and sweetness. Other colors have developed cultural meaning over time, and their meanings get adopted by society, such as pink being the color for girls and blue is for boys. That hasn't always been the case, actually, because blue used to be for girls in Western cultures. It's just changed over time. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to look over some of these colors on the slide and see what you think. You know, purple was the color of royalty back in the day because it was so expensive to make purple dyes. So it's still attached to that luxury feeling. So, looking on the back, for the back blurb again, you're going to start with your pitch. We're going to do a whole session on pitch. That is when you're trying to hook your reader. You're trying to tell just enough about the book to catch their attention. When you're doing this, you really want to focus on the reader. It's all about them. Notice how this cover has a question really large that really draws your eye at the beginning, and then the script that answers that question or gives you an idea where the story is going to go to answer that question. If you're going to put an author biography on the back, make it really short. You can put a longer one inside, but for the most part, short is better. And obviously, the more famous you are, the more important it is to have your bio on the back. If you have reviews, that's absolutely wonderful, and I'd highly suggest using them. But remember, you don't have to use the whole review. You can pull fragments of the sentence and just use that. Make sure you attribute who gave you the review. But you don't have to use whole paragraphs. Keep your cover skimmer friendly, meaning people are going through the bookstore, they're looking at a bunch of different things at once. They've got a lot to absorb. So when they're looking at your book, they want to be able to flip the cover over, look at the back, and notice here where they have bullet points. They want to see exactly what you're going to teach them quickly, especially on a nonfiction book, quickly and cleanly. So a lot of white space in this. When you give bullet statements like this, you always want to use odd numbers. I don't know why, but you want to use 3, 5, or 7 bullets. A big title again at the top, something that's going to catch your attention. This is one of my favorite books, by the way. Writer's Little Helper. And then tell them what they're going to learn from you. Again, focusing on the reader. Why is it important to them to pick up your book? And the bullet statements. The other big thing is check what your cover is going to look like, your front cover, more so than your back cover. Check what it's going to look like on the thumbnail. The thumbnail is what you see when you look at Amazon or barnesandnoble.com or something like that. It's the online version of your book. Your font has to be big enough and your cover art needs to be clear enough that it comes across when it's a small picture, because that's all they're going to see if they're shopping online. This is a great chance to use your beta readers or friends or work colleagues or whatever. Get a couple different book covers that you like for your book. You've got it narrowed down. You might be changing the font color or changing the font or using slightly different color variations or slightly different backgrounds. Print out, a couple different pages of these and show them around to people and have them vote on it for you. Have them tell you what they think when they first see the book. Are they getting the right impression? Ask them what age group that the cover looks like it represents. That's a really telling thing. You can do this online if you're in a Facebook group for writers, or if you just want to use your Facebook in general and you want to show covers and have people give opinions on the covers. People like to get involved in that kind of stuff. The other good thing to know is you don't really have to stay with your cover forever and ever. It's not one of those things that once you've picked a cover, you're done. People, big companies, recover their books all the time. They even retitle their books. It is not unusual. So feel free to put it out there for a while. If it doesn't seem to be working for you, you can change the cover. You can change the font, the picture on it. It doesn't really matter. It's totally up to you. So you're not stuck with anything, but do some good research to make it as close to right the first time. If it's a nonfiction book, it's even more important that you have a big headline, you ask a question, state the fact, and use bold statements. This is what I'm going to do for you. You need to be solving a problem for them. Identify the problem and then solve it. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to help any way I can. Join our Facebook group. We have a group out there as well as the page. The Facebook group is BDP Author Academy. So you are invited to join. Let me know if you have any questions.